Today we'll be deep diving into the world of technology in the built environment, how it's shaping things up, and how site finding for developers is changing. This webinar is here to equip you with the knowledge and tools you need to navigate these changes and stay ahead of the curve. We are lucky enough to be joined by David Lee from Latimer Clarion today, who kindly agreed to answer questions and discuss the art of site finding and adopting new technologies. Over the last couple of years, finding viable sites has become more difficult, so we want to focus on possible solutions to those challenges. Failing to keep up can leave you behind, and with technology becoming a key factor in success, what precautions should developers take moving forward? I can't wait to get stuck into the discussion with Dave, and my colleague Andrew will also be giving us a quick presentation of our generative design tool SiteSolve, which could just be the solution for developers moving forwards. You'll also notice we have a QR code at the bottom of the screen. Please make sure to scan it so you'll be able to submit your answers and questions. Brilliant. So I think the best place to start, Dave, is really sort of understand, what do you look for in an ideal site?
I'd say I'd love to give you a nice simple answer. It's one thing and stuff like that, but of course it's not. What we try and do is simplify things into the three core elements. So time, quality, cost. Yeah. The cost one's the most associated with everybody kind of gets it. If we don't fit enough units on the site, it is not viable for us. Yeah. So there's always a valuation that goes to this, probably front and foremost than anything else. The time one is more about complexity. If we deem it to be a simple site. Now I don't mean like it's an easy build. Is it going to get through planning? Are the local authority going to enjoy it? Is it going to be a simple build in itself? And quality is more about, because we work for a housing association. We treat the housing association as a client of ours. Yeah. Are they going to benefit from this site? Is it somewhere of interest to them? Is the locality good? Is the housing in that area a necessity at that time? Yeah. These kind of three drivers, if any of them slip, we're not buying that site, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously the cost one, like I said, it's very quantifiable. It's very easy to run that through quite quick. Yeah. And with tools like SiteSolve, VU CITY, it becomes even quicker. The other two are very qualitative data, if that makes sense. That's more communication and talking with local authority and housing association and customers in the area. Yeah. So there's a big range of different things that says what is the best site for us. But I'll be honest, it starts with cost.
Yeah.
It starts with a quantifiable. If we get the first tick on the box, then we look to see if it's complex or easy enough for us to do. Then we'll look at it, how do we make the most out of that site as it were. But all of that in a very tight space of time, it's very difficult to get over.
Yes.
Yeah?
It does. So I guess we'll think of the answer. I suppose the first sort of thought from that is, I can imagine a couple of years ago about technology, that process would have taken a bit longer, understanding the cost. So,
yeah. It is. I mean, like, as we mentioned just before we went online, we're making a move from what we used to call reported design, where we would design something, then we'd check it. Yeah. So we would design a mass of a building or something like that, which might take a couple of weeks for one idea. And then we'll go around the town and ask different specialists, does that design work? Yeah, all of that is taking time and we're focused on one answer. Yeah, and most of the time it says, yes, it works in some areas, but not in others. Yeah, what we're trying to move towards is informed design. So front end the data, tell us, is it going to be a carbon efficient building? Is it going to be a cost efficient building? And what you can do then is have more options on the table. Yeah, if you have that speeds up the collaborative process anyway. Yeah, but if you go in with just, this is our plan A, and we're sticking with that, by the time that the timer runs out, you're kind of stuck. You know what I mean? So the idea is not to increase the amount of building, because we can't add more units to land. It's just not possible. The idea is to add quality to the buildings that we actually procure all the way through. And how do we do that? By increasing choice.
Yeah, so essentially that informed design is not building more, it's building better.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, we're not coining the phrase building better.
It's being able to sort of build out with more sustainable sort of building schemes as opposed to just let's just build this out.
Well, it's educated.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, like I said, for years and years, architects have been given us, I'm an architect trade myself, but we've been given a solution and we haven't been part of the iterative process. All of the discarded options that were there, we don't know the narrative as much as we should, as it were. And there's probably a lot of options that we never even explored on the site. So technology coming in this informed way is allowing us to see all of these different options that we get. Because there's some stuff that we actually know better than architects, surprisingly.
Yeah.
Right?
The developer would say.
And vice versa. Right? We're not overly proud, but there's certain things that obviously developers know from their experience what works on a site. Yeah, but that option might not even be tabled because the architect might not think of it, or the information is not readily available for it. Yeah, so that's what this is bringing to the forefront now. Yeah, we're having much more educated, cost-assured kind of decisions.
Yeah,
in the early stage. Yeah,
and I guess touching on what you said, I suppose as a developer, if you've got the ability to actually understand the site before going to the architect, you can work together as opposed to kind of just like, will this site work? You can actually go to the architect, actually, no, I think it will work.
No, absolutely, yeah.
Brilliant. So I suppose moving on to the next question, I guess once you found your ideal site, at what point did you kind of decide a site was no longer worth developing? But you kind of touched on that already, we'll go for the three.
Well, those are the KPIs, right?
Yeah.
If it doesn't hit those three KPIs, it's not going to hit any one of them. Yeah, so if it's not producing the quality that we need for our housing association, for our client, and for the local authority, it's not going ahead, right? But the trigger point more than anything, it always comes at the end of the feasibility. This is our issue. Yeah, so we have to go through the whole process before we decide, yeah, actually this is not for us. It's almost like a yes/no. Whereas what we're trying to do is have a little bit more fluidity to say at early stages, this is not going to work. Yeah, or we have to do something that is outlandish and we're not willing to take the risk on, etc. Or the opposite. I'm hoping the opposite.
Yeah,
we've got more options. This won't work, but this will.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually think that there's probably been a lot of sites that we've turned down in the last 20 years that we could have built something really good on that we didn't have the option for.
So this is actually what I was going to touch on that, because obviously we've spoken to developers as well, and we kind of get the impression that, you know, if you had this technology maybe 4 or 5 years ago, from the land bank you probably had in the past, you know, imagine what you could have done then, knowing the stuff you know now. So I can imagine you probably looking back, thinking all those 20 years worth of sites. If you had that in front of you now, you'd probably be able to start, you know.
I think there'll be a lot more yeses.
Yeah.
Let's just say that, because there's more solutions, there's more options, right? People don't want to invest in time if they think it's first impression it's a bad site. Yeah. But you make that impression because an architect has come along and said, here's a solution that kind of works, right? They haven't explored everything. They've just given you the first pass, if you like. If that's not favourable, it's just a no. Yeah, and you just basically turn it away. But there's probably about 1,000 iterations of what would go on that site.
Yeah.
And nobody's explored. There could be a little gem in there that nobody's thought of yet that could work. And that's kind of what we're trying to mould around. So we've talked offline about, are we going to build more? Probably not. Yeah, because it's all about, we're buying it's an interaction game. We're buying this plot of land, we're going to build on it. That's probably not going to increase because of technology initially, but we'll probably have a better building on every site. And we'll probably say yes to more constrained sites, as it were. Yeah. Things that people are just dusting off, which is better value. Yeah, for us. So if we find something that we presume is constricted, or complex, stuff like that, so does everybody else. The value of the land goes down. Yeah. So we buy it cheaper, we get better value out of the end game if we come up with a good solution.
So I guess it makes site finding probably, I wouldn't say easier, but I think if you're more confident in the ability, actually once you found the site, you've got the tools to actually generate something that actually might work. So it kind of gives you less sort of, difficulty in actually looking at a site as opposed to maybe another developer who hasn't got these tools they'll probably look at a site from a blanket level and think that's not going to work. Whereas if you look at the same site, you've got more tools to actually go, oh, okay, I think this might work, but this must not work.
Oh, well, our business is very different. We're a not-for-profit organisation, stuff like that. So we're a developer, a very large developer, but we're not the likes of Barrett's or Bellwares and stuff like that, who are a private sector developer. Their goals and their KPIs will be driven by the cost bit, more than anything else. Cost, capacity, and units on site, stuff like that, and quick turnover, everything like that. Ours is driven by certainty. Yeah. So we have investors, we have a duty of care to the public more than anything else, because we're a charity, to make value of every site. Yeah. We can't just bank on a very skilled set of people that we've got. We can't just bank on their kind of judgment. Do you know what I mean? We need that kind of backing of data, of information to say this is the right decision. Yeah, this is what we're actually going to move forward with, and this is where your money is going to go. Yeah, because you've got to give that certainty to the investors as well. Yeah, so we're not going to go back and, if you like, coin a phrase, ask daddy for more money every single time, which is easier in the private sector because it's your money. Yeah, you're investing in yourself, you're investing in the people that you have. You know your product, you know what you can produce, and your feasibility is solid. Yeah. But when you're investing other people's money, you need that backing of data and decision making. Yeah, it's all about certainty. I'm putting this forward to you as a proposal, knowing that it's going to work.
And then I guess with that certainty, for example, before you sort of install that site, so how long will it take you to get to that certainty?
Well, I don't know if it's sped up yet, but with minimum 6 weeks to do a feasibility that we can trust to go forward, if that makes sense. But predominantly 3 to 4 months. If you're going to do a thorough job. Yeah. And the main reason of that timescale is communication. It's handing backwards and forwards, and we're in the dark quite a lot of that as the client, as the developer, right? So we're giving this information to an architect. Probably won't hear from them for 2 weeks. As they're optioneering, as they're going through things. Of course. And to be honest, most of their time, it's not that they're just sat drawn for 2 weeks. They're gathering information as well about the site and constraints and everything else. So for us, that long process, the 6 weeks or so, is about them going through, getting all the information that they want, creating numerous designs. But any architect manually will only go through 5 or 6 options, really. And then producing that in a report format to us, because you've got to disseminate all of this and deliver it to a client, which takes time. Yeah. So if you think we won't even get the first design option back for 3 weeks, stuff like that, and then that's a conversation, probably the first conversation. Do we like it? Do we not? Here's the numbers. Very rare that you're going to have one that's just a home run from, first off the bat. Here's the tower. We love it. It's all boxes. Doesn't happen. No. In reality, you're going back and you say, well, I'm not sure the planning authority will like that because here's some more information that we didn't give you at the start or we didn't have, which completely changes the design each time. So if you think, it sounds a long time, 3 to 4 months.
But the to and
it's not really,
it's probably to and fro.
I feel for architects, to be honest, like I say, not just because I used to be one, it's very hard to just hit the nail on the head with a brief, because you're interpreting what somebody else has told you at that time. There might be some things that we just haven't articulated well enough, and that's on us. But it's still an articulation of a brief. It's their experience of what they think will work. Yeah. It takes a long time to get that in your mind, then on paper, then deliver it, and then listen to how you've not hit the target. Yeah. If that makes sense.
No, it does make sense.
And we often do always say, look, it's too high, it's not enough gross to net or something like that. Try again. And we'll go backwards and forwards all the time, which again is not just a phone call. This is days of going backwards and forwards with a new design, a tweak, etc. So if you're talking about 3 to 4 months to go through this.
And then I suppose with sites, or when you're kind of doing that to and throwing, for example, if it does actually work out, no, we do need to change design, we need to sort of look at it. again, I'm assuming obviously people using SiteSolve, that's kind of helping speed up that process again as well, because instead of starting fresh, you can sort of go back to that design and sort of play around the parameters.
Well, it's the communications. So we invested in SiteSolve more than anything to do with our communication with the architect.
Yeah.
And the attraction was the partnership with VU City and VU City Hub. Yeah. So, like I said, the time that an architect takes to deliver a design to a developer, the vast majority is cutting that up, creating views of the building, putting it into a feasibility report, making it look pretty, and all that kind of thing, to just present an idea to us that now he can do by just showing us it on the hub. Yeah. So we can just have a call and he can say, well, here's our proposed option A. By the way, here's option 34 all the way through. If you wanted to look at all of these ones, if you don't think option A is correct, yeah, that collaborative process is speeding us up a hell of a lot. Yeah. So we don't have to just get this pristinely presented report that's been given to us, assess that, which takes time to read it and go through it. You don't understand all the parameters of it because you can't spin around and see all the context and all the data. But now we can. Yeah. And what I'm actually finding is where this is educating us as much as it's educating the architects and giving them a tool. So we'll get a design back on the hub and we'll see initially that we haven't briefed it properly, very quickly. So we'll say, we forgot to tell you that there's a height restriction on that road or something like that. Yeah. Now it's not that we're incompetent briefing.
No,
There
are oversights now.
Well, briefing is the hardest thing, I think, in construction. Articulating exactly what you want. Because you've probably already got a little design mind in yourself and stuff like that. Articulating that to an architect and making them understand exactly what you're after is the hardest thing, I think, in construction. And that's actually the first thing you teach in architecture schools, is briefing and how to actually brief and take a brief, so that you give them the right solution. If you can see it and you can see the narrative happening, as it were, that's when you can inform and you can basically have a conversation with an architect properly, use their skills properly, if that makes sense. Otherwise, like I say, I feel for them, it's almost like they're back against the wall. Sometimes.
Well, I think
here's an option, they don't like that. Here's another one, they don't like that. Yeah, they'll get into our mindset a little bit. They'll know what we're after a little bit quicker, if that makes sense.
No, that does make sense, and I think that kind of goes back to my intro, where I think, especially now, if you're not with the curve, you're falling behind, and kind of what you just said there as well. Again, 4 or 5 years ago, I'm assuming the collaboration of architects is totally different now. So, as you said, because you're able to inform the architect, sort of educate and vice versa, you're both getting to a point where you actually come to an ideal site, come to an ideal design. And I think if you can speed those processes up, it's probably making your life a lot easier, their life a lot easier, because both you can work together. So I guess that does kind of feed into sort of the topic of today, really, sort of technology and how it's driving forward. And I guess one of the pitfalls as a developer would be if you're not adopting them, potentially are you sort of not having the best digital relationship with an architect, with a planner, to kind of identify the pitfalls on the site.
But I'll caveat this: it depends on the architect, right? So technology is one thing, adoption is another, right? And it takes a very agile-minded architect to adopt this kind of thing. Yeah, we're very egotistical, right? We all believe that our mind, we're the best creators, and machines won't take over it and all that kind of thing, but for us, and it's always been the same, communication with an architect and the synergy between minds is the key to a good project. Yeah. And we're very fortunate that we've got a core team of architects now that we look upon, some of which are customers of yours as well. But they understand how the technology can actually enhance the experience. Yeah. And we're not just trying to have a good time. We're looking through this and getting a better building from these architects. And they are our core architects because of that. Yeah. They're not the cheapest, right? Because they're adopting new things. It's arguable when the building comes out, could a different architect have done a better job by hand or anything like that? I'm not getting involved with that. What we look at is how was time spent in that 6 weeks, 3 to 4 months,
as you said, yeah.
to give us the assurity that that is the best design that could possibly go on that site. Yeah. And the people who are using this software, the architects who are using this software and these types of tools, they are consistently giving us the best solution and the best confidence that that is the best solution, or not. Because it's also a very honest thing to say, we don't think you can make any kind of money off this site. We think this is going to be too complex. We think the planners are not going to accept anything on here, and we've tried everything.
Which I suppose is a good thing for you, because as you said, you don't really want to go down the road with a site, not listening to sort of those warnings, and actually you come to that eventuality yourself. If you've got the confidence in the sort of architects' plans around you using technology, probably makes your life a lot easier as well, because at least you know, right, okay, we'll hard stop here. Let's go to the next site or site previously, see what we can do on that.
Yeah, I'm very blessed to be in a team at the minute with very, very skilled land guys. Right? I mean, some of the stuff they're teaching me at the minute is ridiculous. I'm just out there, their instincts of what is good, what is bad, and everything like that. So I've no doubt that they are teaching architects to go along and think the way that they should be in terms of feasibility. But again, even these guys need that backing, and I say the confidence to make that decision, the yes, no. This is a viable site, this is not. Yeah. And if you can run through 100 options in a week, and then refine that for the next 5 weeks, yeah, that's so much more confidence than just running in with 1 or 2 and saying we don't think it'll work. That makes sense. Yeah?
That does. That's quite interesting. So, would you think then potentially with architects, they're less sort of, I suppose the question, the way to phrase it is probably they're not going to be that confident from the sound of it in the past and saying yes, no, with those feasibility checks. But maybe with that educational side from you, with them, with somebody collaborating at site, so you're kind of actually saying, actually, no, you can look at this from a different perspective.
Well, I don't want to slag off architects.
No.
Look, like I said, straight and out, we're very precious in our thing. We think you put a lot of work into a design, stuff like that. Here's your option, we think this works. So 3D visuals came in, which used to take like 2 to 3 weeks to produce themselves. But that changed the way, not that architects design, because they already knew what it looked like. It changed the way that their narrative went to the developer. Yeah? And that's what technology is doing for us. It's giving an understanding between the two parties. I know exactly what I'm going to get from this. Here's the data and the ammunition I need to back it up with my bosses, with my investors, and everybody else. Gives me the security to say yes. Yeah? And the architect gets a tool to deliver his vision much more articulately. Yeah, and they're quite articulate guys anyway, but I think sometimes it's very hard to tell somebody else what is in your head, because they've got a very clear vision. This is what this building's going to look like, this is how amazing it's going to be. You can't always tell somebody who doesn't share that creative kind of aspect in their life exactly what you're after, if that makes sense. So that's where the technology comes in for me. It's all about communication, it's all about getting this narrative across.
And you think by adopting it, would you say, obviously it's improved kind of where you're sort of going from sort of the reported design to informed design. But can you see it, how adopting it further in the future?
Oh, loads. So the concept of the informed design, like I said, this is brand new, to be honest.
That's a good line.
We're probably starting buzzwords all over the place and stuff like that. You've heard it, it's copyright, this whole thing. It opens the door up to things like pre-analytics. That's basically what I'm talking about. So the big thing at the moment, carbon. Right? Embodied carbon is only judged after a building is built. Right? It's only really calculated once it's built, because you need to know the suppliers, the materials used, the distances traveled to site, all that kind of thing that goes into it. And that's a terrible way of looking at, how to manage buildings, design buildings.
It can be done beforehand.
If you can plug that in, even an assumption, you know what I mean? So even if you've got, which I know Sitesoft already has a little carbon predictor in there.
Just touching on that then, say one of the sort of hidden benefit there is potentially, as you said, you don't want to get down the road to that design. If something can eliminate sort of the carbon at the start, well, not eliminate it, but sort of provide you the information to give you the carbon sort of footprint from it, again, that's going to inform you. You can collaborate with your architects, your construction. So again, I think it's one of those hidden benefits, and I would say in terms of
it's the same. And there was I hate to say graphics that were back of the 90s. I think it was early 90s, the McLeamy curve, which was people don't know what that is. They can look it up. Right? It's effectively a curve of impact versus time within a construction period. Mm-hmm. This is why we introduced BIM back in the late 90s, was to inform the design and do things like clash detection and stuff like that. You get it right on the computer before you go onto site. Yeah. What we're trying to do is exactly the same, but in terms of actual design and quality. Yeah. Find out exactly how many units we can get. Find out what the carbon's going to be. Find out what the cost is going to be at early stage when we can have an impact on it. Yeah. Not get to the stage where we've got planning and then decide the cost of this is going to be too high. And one of the biggest things is we've gone through quantity surveyors who are working off minimal information, block plans, square meterage costs, etc., giving us a cost plan. You don't know how much something costs until you ask a builder, because they know how much things cost.
The building materials, the cost, just let alone they'll start going through it.
Yeah, exactly. So if we can influence that at the start, we have certainty again. It all comes back to this thing of trust and certainty. Am I making the right decision? Am I not? Yeah. But if we flood it with information at the start, we're much more powerful in making that decision, yes or no. Yeah. So that's what we're trying to do. That to me is the informed design. It's decision making done right.
Which I think, especially in this sort of day and age, especially with sort of costs, things like that, that's probably the right way to look at it as well. You don't want to go off. Yeah, well, no, I think it is. I think from how you've explained it and how other sort of customers of ours, I think it's very important in this day and age to understand what you're doing, how you're doing it, and what impact it has. Because ultimately that's going to sort of give you the easiest way to get to planning, to the design stage and collaborate. And I guess before we actually jump into sort of a quick run through of SiteSolve, with sort of technology in mind, how have you kind of just found upskilling your workforce with technology? I mean, do you find the younger generation more tech savvy? Is it easier to sort of implement things like this?
I'll not be ageist or anything like that, but well, like I said offline, I mean, my kid can teach me how to use my iPhone now, and he's 5.
Oh, right? Wow. So he'll be on SiteSolve in no time.
Yeah, absolutely. Loves to spin around Revit, his 5-year-old. But effectively, there is a slight generation gap in adoption of software. There always will be. Mm-hmm. But actually, I think you get that with the roles that people are in. Because the guys who are the first kind of responders to getting the site tend to be the younger generation anyway. The guys who are briefing the architects at stage 1. Like I said at the start, I'm very blessed, if you like, with the workforce that is in Clarion now, because there's ridiculously skilled people at our front end. And they've all come from, high-end private developers and all this kind of thing. And it's such a driven, skilled workforce that we've got. They are picking up software ridiculously quickly. Yeah. And like I said, I've been in BIM for 20 years. And the biggest problem that we've always had is adoption and upskilling, because people didn't even want to use AutoCAD. Back in the 90s, they thought it was voodoo. Yeah. People didn't want to use email.
No, it's fact. I remember the fax, people sending orders via fax.
Yeah. I used to have a fax machine. I used to love it. But it's trying to get people out of that mentality. And this is where the generation thing is. If you've done something for 20 years, it's very hard to change. Yeah. But the newer generation are just adopting things so quickly. They're agile with this kind of stuff. They see the benefit. And I think that's the hardest thing to do, is show people how it's going to influence their life for the better.
Yes.
To influence that it's going to be used. And with things like generative design, that's what we're talking about now, there's a plus and a negative to it. Our guys love it, because for them, they get to see what's in the architect's mind. They get all the benefits of it, and they get that certainty. Architects tend to steer away from it, because even now in architecture school, you get taught how to do hand drawings, and you get taught the old way. Yeah, you get taught that you are the creative mind, and this is the iterative process that you have to go through step by step. Yeah. So they are kind of slower to adopt the technology than we are, if that makes sense. And we're the ones who are benefiting from it more, I think, at this stage. I think as it evolves, architects will kind of come on board a little bit more when they get over the fear factor that it's not going to take their jobs. Enhance the jobs. We call it a co-pilot, right? That's exactly how it's supposed to be used, as an assist to it.
And would you think then, especially if we take developers, for example, would you kind of say the ones that have adopted it earlier are probably in a better position moving forward at the moment in terms of, as you said, the informed design, certainty? Does that kind of give you the more sort of opportunities, you would say, as opposed to someone that potentially wasn't using, technology as well as you, for example?
Well, we're building better buildings. I'm not going to be overly arrogant about it, but I think some of the stuff that we're coming out with at the moment is way better than the general market, as it were, in terms of designs.
Mm-hmm.
So most of that put down to our architects as well, because, like I said, we work with very good architects. I don't think it gives you the ability to produce more, or have a better financial backing, as it were, between somebody who's probably still going old school to us. But we are undoubtedly building better buildings throughout, and we're a national kind of company. We've got some great buildings in Manchester, Leeds, and York, and stuff like that.
Yes, obviously, yeah.
All that does is generate confidence in funding for us, because, like I said, we're a charitable business, we're a housing association. We get our funding externally. If we go to the market and ask for that funding with the confidence that we have created 20 great buildings last year, stuff like that, it puts us in a much better position to have that confidence to our investors. Yeah, and that's what we're all about. Yeah, if we were a private sector, we'd be talking about, can I build more? That's where the technology comes in. For me, it's more about, can we give the confidence to our investors, to our clients, to everybody else, that this is the number that we're going to build to. This is the amount of units that we will achieve. We will get planning from this one. You save a pair of hands. That's what we're trying to get to, if that makes sense.
No, that does. And I'd like to also get your opinion, obviously, as we run through site itself. But Andrew, if you're happy to go into site itself, this is my colleague Andrew. And as we go through it, we have a Q&A here as well. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to kind of just jump in.
Yeah, brilliant. I'm going to just do a really, really quick demonstration. It's not even really a demonstration. If anyone wants a proper demonstration of site, it'll be very difficult to do in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, however long. We're going to end up in here. But yeah, just kind of going over some of those processes, some of those tools that developers like Dave and the team are using, but also architects as well, hopefully, through that kind of briefing. You said the briefing stage is pretty difficult. These kind of tools hopefully make that a lot more simple as well. So there's a lot of adoption with this now. If I just go to my screen, I've just loaded up an area. This is Blackfriars. This is not using VU CITY modeling either. This is just using OpenStreetMap. I don't want to do ourselves a disservice here because we're a lot more accurate than this. What I do have here, though, is a bit of a canvas just to put down a site boundary to then generate some options. And I'm going to generate those options with a few kind of limitations, constraints, and side things there as well. So if I'm just going to create a site boundary really quickly.
So the big thing, if people haven't seen SiteTool before, that it's a very simple user interface anyway. You've got an input, you've got a mechanism, you've got an output.
Yes.
Yeah. And what I actually love about everything that you're seeing on the left-hand side, that's the input tab. Yeah. So that's your kind of basis of data. Sorry, I'm taking away from your demonstration here, Andy.
I'd love to hear from yourself who actually used it.
But it's intuitive in that sense, yeah. So everything on the left-hand side, that is your input, that is your constraints, that is your product book or your house types, apartment types, everything like that. Basically, what you want, your criteria.
Yes.
But all the time, I don't know if you can see on the right-hand side, there's a live bar of outputs on there. So your square meterage, you've got your net to gross areas, everything that we need. So this is the informed design piece. What if I move something, how does it impact the output each time? Rather than just going down a rabbit hole and then finding out the report at the end. Sorry, Andy,
No, that is a good example.
Exactly what you said. We're putting in those kind of inputs on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, I will flip those cameras off in a second just so you can see some of those there. But just going into generation straight away, we haven't set many limits here. We're looking at maximising the net area, so it's just going to build as much as it can within this space. Of course, you're not going to build that densely. There are things you've got to consider, but those considerations go into the left-hand side down here. Things like looking at total building heights, looking at the mix of your apartments within the site, looking at even core structures where you want those cores, or if there are amenities on the site as well. But it's producing this really quickly to certain optimizations. In this case, we're maximizing the net area. That's one option. We could choose to actually really refine that and maximize to net to gross ratio, or south-facing apartments, or dual aspect apartments. Different options really, depending on what the site requires or what you believe the site requires. So there's always the kind of the input is just as important as any of the quick outputs that are coming in there. And exactly kind of as was discussed before, it's that collaboration, is using it as a tool rather than always the answer, and being able to get as many options out of it at the same time very quickly. Now, you can see here, this is dense. You're not going to build this. But given the more inputs you put in there, the better the options come, the more you can save within there. But one of the really key points within here as well is, I'm just going to store this as an option, is you can actually start to manipulate it, start to work with it. So if you do have that kind of expertise around where you want certain blocks, where you want certain heights, all those kind of things, not only can you set the limitations, but you can also go in and adjust the generative options that have come here. So you could, let's say, just remove some height at the early, or kind of along this road here. Actually, that's the railway line and road. You can do that, and very quickly, if I just switch to take these cameras off, we can see then on the right hand side the key areas. So we've got the GEA, or the total number of residents or residential units on the site, and the amenities that we've already put together within there. Very, very crucially, we've got cores, so the number of cores, the core area, and then taking it a step further, we make assumptions.
There you go. Trust that number at your will, you know.
Exactly. We're starting that kind of journey. Of course, we don't know what the land was used for before. Maybe that's something we can start to bring in the future, or understanding the land use and things like that. But we're starting to kind of bring in these analysis tools as well to really kind of help with that process. But the better the information going in, obviously the better the results are going to be, the more options, the more opportunities you can see, and you're really taking that kind of top first 30-40% of that journey, really kind of front loading that and doing that within that, you say, kind of 3 weeks to get that initial plan back from the architects.
Well, you did 30 seconds of running that. I know it's only like, what, 10% of the way through.
That's it,
and we probably saw 7 or 8 dramatic changes. It's just gone to another one. In options of what you can actually do to that site. Yeah. So that I think people forget that creativity and things that you can do to a site is insurmountable. The amount of things that you can actually do is crazy. But if you're restricted to an architect to do, because of time, 3, 4, 5 options, because you've got to draw that up. You've got to think about every element of it. Yeah. I think you've just hit about 20 options of completely different schemes on there. But you've also got the data backing as well, and the reporting ability of each of those schemes. You know exactly how many units are in each one.
Yeah, and how many ideas would you say you would even look at, yourself and your team?
You know, I can't speak for how many an architect will think about all the way through, right? But I'm pretty sure they would look at a site and already have a predefined kind of, this is the optimum thing. Yeah. So you showed that one with the, you know, the dense kind of options, right? They wouldn't think of that, right? But we want to see it. You know, we want to know that he's thought about it and stuff like that. They're not going to document any of these as well. So the big power that you've saved 3 ideas there. All of them ideas have documented, reported data on every single one of them. What you tend to have is the optimum option from the architect documented up the yin yang.
Yeah.
It's how many units you're going to get. They might tell you how many units on all the others, but this is the GIA for it. This is the gross to net. This is everything else that you get. They'll only do that really on the primary option.
Mm.
They won't give you all of that information for the discarded options. You know, down to, let's say 10.
Yeah.
Let's say a really good architect goes to 10 options. You're not going to get all the data on all of them and stuff like that. You can have 100 here within a day.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Not
guess-
even that. I mean, you've done it in 30 seconds or something like that. And then you can start playing about with the architect on screen.
So it's that collaboration
Yeah,
again. It's that
absolutely.
digital collaboration, which you probably couldn't have done before, but now you can. You've got the idea there, visualized,
Exactly.
and you have both. You could input into it. Sorry.
And most of our stuff is, most meetings are now done on Teams and stuff like that now. And like I said, the problem before was having to dissect all that information. If you gave me that as a scheme right now, that will take probably at least a couple of days to document, put down into a report, and then send me through. The amount of views that you would have to generate to show what that scheme is going to be, because it's 7 or 8 buildings there, with data on each one, in a nice, because they don't send you rubbish reports,
No, but-
right? You've got to have a nice, pretty report that goes out. You're probably talking a couple of days just to tell me what it is, and I won't fully understand it either. But if you run me through it like that, and I say, well, hold on, them 2 towers are a little bit tall for me, yeah?
Because you already have that informed knowledge. You know
Looking
what's going to
into-
work
yeah, yeah.
through your own experience.
What happens if you knock them down like you're doing on screen right now? And does it have an impact to how many units does that give me? It's normally the question. If we do this, how many units do we result in? Yeah, that's live data. We can see it right now on screen. If we knock this down by 3 stories, I lose
X amount.
25 units
Yeah.
on there. What does that do to my sums? In the future, what does that do to me carbon and all that kind of thing? It's all there. It's all about impact and decision all the way through. And like I said, informed design. So, I mean, this is invaluable for us. There's a lot to be done with, setting up that site constraint that you did on there, because you drew a red line boundary. I would say that needs to be the developable boundary rather than the red line. Because I think, you've got some buildings right on the end of the boundary there.
Yeah.
Is there on-looking things, and this is where I think VU City comes in.
Yes, because you
More
can
than
put it back
anything
into
else,
VU City.
Yeah, what we're trying to do is actually set up the site in VU City, using the constraints and all of the overlays that you've got, the shadow and everything else, bring the developable area in, and then we generate within that.
Yeah, and it is something that we can start to do. We have things. We just had a question actually.
Oh,
that
wonderful.
Kind of moves on quite nicely to that, which is, of course, this is the site boundary. But what about areas that you might want to exclude in there? And one of the points was roads, where how your fixed routes are shown or ignored, or how it works with those as well. And that's all stuff we can develop into this site boundary. Like I said, this isn't a full demonstration of site solve. It's really just to allow those that are watching to kind of at least have an understanding of the kind of tool. We're happy to do a full demonstration of any of this with anyone. But all of that can be added in there. So on your point, I think the exclusion zones perhaps is a way to kind of do that.
Well, we do it with a 0 height level. So obviously in here you can actually set different levels of maximum height. We put in a little place, so if we've got an easement or we've got maybe a gas mains or something like that you don't want to build up on or something like that, we will literally draw an area with a 0 height allowance on it, which actually tricks the software to say you can't build on this place, if that makes sense. Maybe we're fudging it, maybe we're not using it properly, you can tell us.
I've just added one there. It's an exclusion zone. It's fairly new to the software, so you can name this whatever you want. You could say those pipes are there, or this is for recreation, or whatever it might be, and you don't need to use that workaround. So you've learned something new.
Exactly.
But there we go.
But that essentially, as you mentioned, that is site solve. That's its most core, which Andrew's gone through, and as I said, we can delve into it should anyone actually want to see it in full. But I think for you, just a question, now that you've seen site solve and use it, I mean, do you think that technology is going to help people sort of save time and obviously sort of the money side of it as well in terms of?
Well, for an architect, yes. They will say, well, again, that's a hard question. I don't predict that we're going to save fees on architects. I don't. I think that that 6 weeks will probably stay at 6 weeks, but it will allow them to use that time more efficiently all the way through. And we will go through 200 options rather than 5. And we'll have a much better decision at the end of it. Right?
That informed decision, the key word that we're going to take.
There you go.
Informed decision.
Coin, man. To me, it's very hard because when people are trying to integrate software and technology and stuff like that, they always want to see a payback. Yeah, we're exactly the same. If I brought in software, so I had to do a business case for bringing in sites over in VU City, and the basis was we would save on architectural fees. Yeah, going forward. But actually, I was very careful not to say that in this one because I think they'll just use the fee better.
Yeah.
Yeah. It might mean that we can do more work with the same architects, and therefore that strategic partnership reduces our fee.
And you build trust, you build confidence with each other. Yes.
If the same architect is knocking it out the park every single time, we're going back to that architect. You know, that's basically what we're talking about now. And that fee will go down each time. Plus, they know that they can actually deliver what we want, you know. So they have the certainty. They're not building in risk into their fee. That will come down with efficiency that says we're going to do it this way. We know it's more efficient. You get it in 6 weeks. It's only going to be one iteration of design process, and we're going to move forward with that. Because predominantly architects don't get paid well for feasibilities,
No.
you know, for sketch work and stuff like that. They get paid better for getting you to planning. And detailed design. That's what they want. Yeah, some will do this for free. If anybody's watching, we'll have free feasibilities. But like I said, this helps insurmountably for our side of the comfort that we're actually getting a value from that fee each time. If that makes sense.
No, it does, and
it's all about cost certainty. It's about value. It's not about less.
It's about driving change, and I think, as you've really alluded today, it is driving change for the better. You know. It's making you make informed decisions. It's helping you design better, build better. And I think ultimately, in this day and age, that's the way forward. I think. And then, kind of leading on to my last question, which how can you see technology in a couple of years advance? I mean, do you have any how would you like to see it potentially, or where do you see it going next?
We kind of touched on it earlier.
Yeah.
It's increasing the pre-analytics. You know, you've got something on there which we've touched on, embodied carbon, big kind of buzzword at the minute and stuff like that. How do you calculate embodied carbon? We do it after the job is finished. I can see this being plugged into early adoption software. Yeah. So if we know exactly what carbon kind of output is going to be, or we can predict it within a degree of certainty, there's a lot going on with like biodiversity and net gains and stuff like that. If we can have that kind of data in there, anything really to do with GIS data within there, how does it impact, how does each design impact different social societies and foot traffic and all this kind of thing? I can see all of these things coming together because these were very, very separate disciplines in the past. So you would look at overheating, you would look at shadowing and everything else within there, overlapping all of these layers to get to the optimum design. Yeah. Rather than saying, well, here's our design, how does it work? Yeah. And
you're telling it how it works, essentially.
Telling it how it works. Ecology and all this kind of thing. And, if we're talking about how would this affect, bats, and you know what I mean? That's a specialist thing that you used to go out for. And it delays everything because you're waiting for a response. And when you get that response, you can't change it. So you do workarounds, you deal with these kind of things. If all of that is plugged in to say, this is the optimum design, that's what we're going to get. Yeah.
We had things like nutrient neutrality the last couple of years, which I can imagine as well.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a headache for developers trying to sort of navigate that. So I can understand your point there. How can you do it? How can you build it?
Yeah. Well, like I said, big options, things like power generation. Yeah. Obviously, cost of living crisis and stuff like that at the minute is one of the biggest things for our customers. We can plug in how much the bills are going to be based upon how much energy that building will take, because we've already generated the MAP kind of surplus from that. that's massive for us to actually say we're going to deliver somebody a net zero building or something like that. Yeah, so I think that's where the technology would go. I think you'll get more collaborative technologies. You might buy everybody in, all this kind of thing, and collaborate them like you do with SiteSolve. But I think you'll have things like sunlight analysis in there. I think you'll have past planning, which is already available in VU City. So that's why I like VU City. You've got these layers all the way through. Here are the developments that are coming up.
And here the context around the surrounding area as well.
Yeah, so like I say, if you're designing something now, if you had that design that you just had on screen, you might not know that right next to it, it's got planning permission for a shard that's coming in. That's what VU City will offer us now. Yeah, I think it's just more informed design each time. Collaboration of software, elements like carbon, a lot of the environmental kind of stuff that we're talking about now will be plugged into this. Yeah, I don't know who you're going to buy next, but there you go.
Well, you've given us a few good ideas, to be fair. Dave, to be fair.
I'm costing you a lot of money.
Well, brilliant. Well, thank you very much for joining. And obviously the people joining online. Thank you, David, for your wonderful insights into the wonderful world of generative AI. If anyone watching online as well, should they want to know more about SiteSolve, please do reach out to us and we're more than happy to sort of go through it in depth. Brilliant.